Why did the gunfire suddenly stop? Commander Marcus Latrell pressed his back against the jagged rock, blood soaking through his vest, lungs burning with every breath. His radio spat static in his ear, broken words, half pleas. He had stopped listening to it because the truth didn't need to be said anymore. His team was pinned, their ammo was low, and the enemy had numbers that could crush them like ants. It wasn't supposed to be this way. 3 hours earlier, they were ghosts moving through the mountains of Kunar province, a classified reconnaissance mission, nothing more. The terrain was brutal, the air thin and sharp, every ridge a potential death trap. But SEALs were trained for this. Marcus had done worse. His men trusted him and he trusted them. That's what made the moment unbearable. Somewhere between confidence and collapse, between mission brief and ambush, the world had shifted. Delta's position compromised, he whispered into the radio, knowing command could barely hear him. We're taking heavy fire from the North Ridge. Beside him, William McRaven, the team's senior tactical officer, clawed forward on his belly, dirt streaking his face. We're outgunned and outmanned, sir. Extraction's impossible with that machine gun nest. The machine gun. Its rhythm had become the cruel metronome of their countdown. Every time it barked, stones shattered, men screamed. The valley itself seemed to tighten around them. The rest of his team returned sporadic fire, careful, measured. Ammunition wasn't just running low, it was nearly gone. Robert O'Neill, their sharpshooter, cursed under his breath as he slid the last magazine into his rifle. 30 hostiles at least, maybe more. He didn't say what they were all thinking. 30 against 6, no air cover, no extraction. You don't fight those odds. You survive them if you're lucky. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He had been here before, staring at the math, calculating minutes of life left. He reached for his radio again, preparing to call in their final coordinates. If nothing else, command deserved to know where to collect the bodies. And then it happened. A single crack split the valley. Not the staccato roar of the machine gun, not the panicked chatter of rifles, just one precise shot, cold and clean. The machine gun fell silent. What the hell? O'Neill lifted his scope, searching the ridge. Another crack, another body crumpled. Through his binoculars, Marcus saw it. The gunner slumped over his weapon, a neat, impossible wound marking his temple. McRaven's voice was sharp. Unknown sniper, identify yourself. The only reply was another shot, cleaner, farther. An insurgent commander collapsing mid-command, nearly 800 yards away. Even O'Neill, usually unshakable, whispered in awe, "No one makes that shot in this wind. No one." But someone just had. Marcus's mind spun. Reinforcements, unlikely, locals, impossible. Whoever this was, they weren't supposed to exist. Yet the impossible continued. Shot after shot, deliberate, methodical, like a ghost pulling threads. Enemy fighters dropped, scattered, stumbled in confusion. The valley shifted from chaos to panic, the balance of power tilting back in favor of the 6 battered men hiding in the rocks. Move, Marcus ordered, adrenaline surging. Extraction point Charlie, now. They didn't question. They moved, cutting through the pass like shadows, guided by the unseen rifle that cracked behind them whenever a pursuer came too close. Every shot seemed designed not just to kill, but to buy them seconds, space, hope. At the extraction point, the rotor wash from the descending helicopter whipped dust into Marcus's face. He turned one last time, scanning the ridge. There. For the briefest second, sunlight caught her. A slight figure, an athletic build, long hair tucked under a cap, rifle slung across her back. She looked toward them, directly at them, and raised her hand in a silent salute before disappearing into the rocks. McRaven's disbelief broke into words. That's a woman. The chopper lifted them out, but Marcus's eyes never left the ridge until the mountains swallowed her whole. Back at base, the mystery deepened. There are no female snipers in this region, the intelligence officer insisted, his tone clipped, bureaucratic. None. No operatives matching that description. Impossible. Well, someone saved our lives out there, O'Neill fired back. His voice carried something Marcus rarely heard from him, reverence. And whoever she was, she shoots better than anyone I've ever seen. They argued, theories spun. Reinforcements, mercenary hallucination, none fit. Marcus stayed quiet, though his mind replayed the salute, the way she moved, not desperate, not random, but practiced, purposeful. Later that night, McRaven knocked on his quarters. He carried files, grainy photos, service records. I found something. The photo was old, faded. A woman with steady eyes, a confident half-smile, wearing a Marine uniform. Alexandra Reynolds, scout sniper, reported killed in action 2 years ago in this very region. Marcus stared. The resemblance was undeniable. That's impossible, he muttered. Her file spoke for itself. Expert marksman, specialized in high-angle mountain warfare. Her body never recovered, officially dead. Unofficially, he had just seen her alive. Days later, Marcus secured permission to revisit a remote village near the ambush site. It wasn't easy to justify, but his gut wouldn't let it go. The villagers were wary, eyes hardened by too many wars. But when Marcus mentioned the woman's sniper, something shifted. The elder's expression softened, like a secret had been touched. Ah, the man whispered. The guardian ghost. She comes with the mountain winds, protects us. Who is she? McRaven pressed. Her team was murdered. Doctors, healers, all gone. She alone survived. Now she watches over our children as if they were her own. Marcus felt a weight settle in his chest. This wasn't just about survival or missions anymore. This was about something deeper, a woman living between worlds, tethered to grief, bound by duty no one asked of her. As they prepared to leave, a child tugged Marcus's sleeve and pressed something small into his palm. A spent rifle cartridge, marked with distinctive etchings. Her calling card. That night, as the team camped in the foothills, shadows flickered at the edge of the firelight. Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but then he froze. She was there, standing just beyond the glow, rifle across her back, face hidden beneath a scarf, but those eyes unmistakable. You should be more careful, Commander, she said softly. Her voice carried calm, but also something heavier, something that belonged to the mountains. These valleys have eyes. Marcus rose slowly, words tangled in his throat. Alexandra Reynolds, you're alive. A faint smile touched her lips, sad, defiant. Am I? She stepped closer, the fire revealing the scars on her hands, the resolve in her stance. The story of my death gives me freedom. I can go where others can't, do what others won't. That's my choice. You're still one of us, Marcus said, almost pleading. We can bring you back. Her gaze drifted toward the distant village, faint lights twinkling like fragile stars. I found my purpose here. By letting me stay dead, you helped me protect them. The words cut deep. She wasn't asking. She was telling him the truth of her world. Before he could answer, she melted back into the darkness. By morning, only one trace of her remained. A single shell casing laid neatly beside Marcus's gear. Her promise. Her legend. In his report, Marcus wrote simply, local intelligence inconclusive, no further evidence. But deep down, he knew the truth. Some legends weren't meant to be solved. Some deserved to remain shadows, acting where dignity speaks louder than recognition. And somewhere in the mountains, Alexandra Reynolds watched over strangers, unseen, unknown, unthanked. A ghost who chose silence over glory. A woman who vanished into the wind. What makes someone choose exile over recognition? 3 weeks after the ambush, Marcus Latrell still carried her ghost in his thoughts. The others had moved on, at least outwardly. O'Neill joked again. McRaven buried himself in after-action reports. The younger operators drowned their unease in workouts. But Marcus found himself starring at the ridge's outside base, waiting for a flicker of movement that never came. She had been real, flesh, blood, and sorrow hidden under a scarf, but Command wanted her memory buried. A line in his debrief was enough to close the file, and the military machine had no appetite for mysteries. Unconfirmed sighting, local legend, nothing actionable. Yet every night Marcus heard her voice in the firelight. By letting me stay dead, you helped me protect them. She had chosen her grave and written her epitaph, all while breathing. And he couldn't let it go. Orders came down for a new operation. Another reconnaissance mission, another valley, another chance to walk the knife's edge. The team received the briefing in silence, but the air was different this time. Heavy, distracted. "Intel says light resistance," the officer droned, pointing to maps. "But you'll need to move fast before the supply convoy arrives. Questions?" McRaven raised a brow. "What's the exit plan if resistance isn't light?" The officer hesitated too long. "You'll adapt." Marcus didn't miss the sideways glance O'Neill gave him. They'd heard this before. And last time, half a dozen men almost didn't come back. The briefing ended, men stood, chairs scraped. But Marcus noticed her absence. Not physically, she had never sat at their table, but her presence was like a missing seat. For the first time in his career, he wanted someone outside the uniform in that room. Someone who had saved them when the system failed. And it gnawed at him. Why was she not at this table? Why had they let her become a myth instead of a soldier? The mountains welcomed them back with silence. Silence was never good. The op was textbook until it was. They spotted the convoy earlier than expected, flanked by more fighters than intelligence had promised. Marcus signaled halt, his gut tightening. They had walked into the shadow of another lie. Chris Kyle muttered, "This feels wrong." It was wrong. Every instinct screamed it. Then movement, shadows unfolding from rock, rifles glinting in the sun. The valley erupted. Gunfire shredded the air, stone splinters cutting faces, dirt exploding under boots. McRaven shoved a man down, covering him. O'Neill fired until his rifle clicked empty. Pinned again, no way out. And in that suffocating moment, Marcus's heart did something strange. It waited. It listened. It longed for her. Would she come again? Would the crack of her rifle break the storm? Seconds stretched, men screamed, commanders shouted, but the ridge stayed silent. Nothing came. For the first time, Marcus felt the sting of betrayal. She had said she would protect them. Hadn't she? Or was that just what he wanted her to mean? He forced his anger down, made himself move, made himself fight. They clawed their way through an escape route, every inch paid for with grit and blood. When they finally broke contact and collapsed behind a ridge hours later, the silence was unbearable. McRaven slammed his fist against rock. "We're being fed into a meat grinder." O'Neill spat dust. "And where was our damn guardian angel this time?" The words stung more than Marcus expected. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Back at base, tempers boiled. O'Neill's hands shook as he cleaned his rifle. "I don't buy it anymore, sir. Maybe she was never real. Maybe we all hallucinated under stress." "She was real," Marcus said flatly. "Then where the hell was she?" Silence. No one wanted to answer. Later that night, Marcus walked alone near the wire, the desert wind cutting cold against his skin. He hated doubt. It hollowed men out. And yet doubt was all he had left of her. Until he saw it. A single casing, placed deliberately on a rock by the path, marked with the same distinctive etching. His chest tightened. She had been there, watching, waiting, choosing not to intervene. Why? The next week blurred into routine, patrols, drills, briefings. But Marcus carried that casing everywhere, in his pocket like a question with no answer. He began asking quiet questions around the villages. At first the locals avoided him, eyes lowered, hands closed. But then a boy no older than 10 whispered a name, the Guardian. "She is real?" Marcus asked. The boy nodded gravely. "She teaches the women to shoot. They say she never misses." "Where is she?" The boy only pointed to the mountains, "Where the wind lives." It was McRaven, who finally caught him searching maps late one night. "You're obsessed," McRaven said, not accusing, just weary. "She's out there." "And what then? You drag her back, file the paperwork, hand her a uniform." Marcus looked up sharply. "She deserves to come home." McRaven shook his head. "Home isn't where you want it to be, Marcus. Sometimes it's where you're needed most, and she's already chosen." The words lodged deep, uncomfortable but true. Still, Marcus couldn't silence the thought. Maybe she hadn't chosen. Maybe she had been forced. And maybe, just maybe, she was waiting for someone to pull her back. Days later, a mission changed everything. They were moving through another valley when the radio crackled with interference. Not the usual static, but a voice. Faint, female. "South Ridge, ambush, turn back." Every man froze. Marcus's pulse hammered. "Identify yourself." Silence. Then the radio went dead. The team shifted, uncertain. Was it a trick, a trap? O'Neill whispered, "It's her." Marcus didn't hesitate. He changed course. Minutes later they saw it, the glint of rifles, the perfect kill box laid out for them. If they'd kept moving, they'd be gone. She had saved them again. That night Marcus stood alone by the fire, staring into the darkness. "You were there," he said softly, as if speaking to the wind. "Why won't you show yourself?" The flames flickered. The mountains whispered nothing. And yet, for the first time since the ambush, Marcus didn't feel alone. She was out there, watching. Somewhere between ghost and guardian. Somewhere between myth and soldier. And he knew this story wasn't finished. Why warn them but never stay? The question haunted Marcus Latrell like a splinter buried too deep to dig out. She had spoken over the radio, clear enough to save their lives, yet vanished again without leaving a name. It wasn't cowardice. He had seen her face the enemy without hesitation. No, this was choice. Deliberate. A line drawn not against them, but against being known. And Marcus needed to know why. The team carried the weight of her ghost differently. O'Neill had stopped doubting her existence. Now he cursed her silence. McRaven, pragmatic as always, urged Marcus to let it go. But Marcus couldn't. It wasn't just curiosity, it was something heavier. That radio warning had saved not only his men, but also the fragile trust between them. Without it, he wasn't sure they'd still be functioning as a team. She was becoming more than a sniper in the shadows. She was a tether, holding them together when everything else fell apart. But tethers eventually snap. The mission came down at dawn, a suspected weapons depot hidden in the foothills. Simple on paper, but the words light resistance had lost all meaning. Marcus studied the maps as the others prepared gear. Every line of the terrain felt like a deception. He glanced at McRaven, who raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking of her again," McRaven said quietly. Marcus didn't deny it. "If she knows something, she'll be there. Or she won't. Either way we go." They went. Hours into the operation, the valley narrowed, too quiet, the kind of quiet that meant eyes were already watching. Marcus felt it in his bones. Then, just as the first shots cracked from the ridges, another voice cut across the radio. Hers. 2 ridges left, 30 meters up, they're dug in. The men reacted instantly. O'Neill swung his rifle, spotted the nest, and dropped the gunner. McRaven barked orders, shifting their position before they could be flanked. Within minutes, what could have been another slaughter turned into survival. When the dust cleared, Marcus's chest heaved not from exhaustion but from the truth settling in deeper. She wasn't just a ghost. She was watching, listening, guiding them from shadows like an unseen commander. And still she stayed away. Later, back at the FOB, Intelligence Officer Marcus Harper slid a folder across the table. You keep asking about your phantom. Maybe this helps. The photo hit Marcus like a blow. A young woman, athletic build, eyes sharp enough to cut steel, holding an Olympic medal. Rebecca Harrington, American biathlete, silver medalist, disappeared 3 years ago while volunteering with a medical mission in Afghanistan. That's not possible, O'Neill muttered. This woman had military-grade skills. No civilian makes shots like that. Her grandfather was a Marine sniper in Vietnam, Harper said. Her father was force recon. She grew up on a ranch in Montana, been shooting since she was 5, but no official military training. McRaven leaned back skeptical. Unofficially. Unofficially, locals tell stories. A foreign woman they call the Guardian protects villages, always vanishes afterward. Marcus closed the file slowly, his mind unraveling. He had believed she was Reynolds, the Marine declared KIA. Now another name, another ghost layered over the first. Which was true? Were either true, or was the legend larger than any single woman? The uncertainty ate at him. But one truth remained undeniable. Whoever she was, she had chosen the shadows. Days passed with no sign. No radio voice, no rifle crack, no casing left behind. Until the 5th day. They stumbled upon a hidden observation post in an abandoned shepherd's hut. Dust disturbed, a cot still warm, ration wrappers not yet faded, and on the floor shell casings, marked with the same distinctive etchings. "She's been here," O'Neill whispered. Marcus knelt, running his thumb over one casing. Not just been here, she had watched them, chosen not to approach. Why keep her distance now? The question grew heavier, pressing into him like the thin mountain air. That night the fire burned low. The men slept fitfully, exhaustion finally claiming them. Marcus stayed awake, scanning the dark. He told himself it was duty, but the truth was simpler. He hoped. And when she came, it wasn't with the distant crack of a rifle or a voice on the radio. It was with silence. They woke to find her sitting calmly near the fire, her rifle laid across her knees. No one moved, no one dared. Marcus's voice broke the stillness. "Rebecca Harrington." She nodded once. Her face carried no fear, no apology, only steel wrapped in quiet sorrow. "The woman who had that name died when her team was massacred," she said softly. "Doctors, aid workers, I couldn't save them, I never will, but I can make sure it never happens again." Her voice was calm, but the weight beneath it was crushing. "You're American," McRaven said carefully. "We can get you home." She shook her head. "This is my home now. I've trained local women to fight back, to protect their children. We defend what no army can." "That's not your responsibility," O'Neill argued. His words were sharp but not unkind. Her eyes met his, unwavering. "Isn't it?" She gestured toward the distant villages, lights twinkling in the valley. Every child sleeping safely tonight would disagree. No one had an answer. Before dawn, she led them to a hidden cache of intelligence. Maps, supply routes, weapon depots, the kind of information teams bled for. "This is what you came for," she said. "Now you can finish your mission." Marcus stared at her, wanting to say more, to ask why she saved them, why she condemned herself to a life in shadows. But before he could speak, she rose. "This is where I leave you." "Come with us," Marcus tried again. She paused, then looked at him with a small, tired smile. "Some guardians need to remain in the shadows." By the time the extraction helicopters arrived, she was gone. From the chopper, Marcus caught one last glimpse, a distant ridge, a solitary figure standing tall against the dawn. She raised her hand in a salute, the same silent gesture as before. Then the mountains swallowed her once more. That night Marcus couldn't sleep. Her words replayed again and again. Some guardians need to remain in the shadows. But shadows don't last forever. Even the strongest vanish when morning comes. And he couldn't shake the fear that one day soon, she would vanish for good, not by choice, but by the same violence she had spent years defying. And when that day came, no one would know her name. No one but him. Why does someone walk away from everything, family, country, even their name, and never look back? The question wouldn't leave Marcus Latrell. Each mission blurred into the next, but his mind stayed tethered to that firelit night when she had appeared, spoken with quiet conviction, and vanished again. Rebecca Harrington, or was it Alexandra Reynolds, or some other name buried in the dust of reports and rumors? She was all of them, she was none of them. But one truth cut deeper than the rest. She had chosen exile over recognition, and Marcus could not understand why. 2 weeks later, the team received orders to support a clearing operation near the Petch River Valley. The terrain was brutal, notorious even among seasoned operators. Intelligence suggested strongholds buried in cliffsides, defended by networks of caves. The kind of mission that swallowed men whole. During the briefing, O'Neill muttered under his breath, "Maybe our guardian ghost will show up again." The words earned him a sharp look from McRaven. "You keep hopping for miracles, you stop making plans." But Marcus caught the edge of something else in McRaven's tone. Not disbelief. Not anymore. Just a weary frustration, as though depending on her made them weaker, more reckless. Yet Marcus felt the opposite. The thought of her presence, even unseen, steadied him, like a lifeline he hadn't asked for but couldn't release. The mission unraveled faster than expected. They had barely established Overwatch when the first ambush hit. Mortar rounds slammed into the ridge, showering rock and flame. Fighters surged from the caves, numbers far beyond the intelligence estimate. The air was chaos, shouting, gunfire, the hiss of shrapnel tearing through stone. Marcus dragged a wounded operator behind cover, adrenaline burning his veins. O'Neill cursed as he tried to reload with shaking hands. "Too many," McRaven shouted over the roar. "We're boxed in." And then, the sound Marcus had prayed for. A single crack, precise, cold. An enemy spotter collapsed, his radio falling silent. Another shot, a machine gunner toppled from his perch. Relief swept through Marcus like oxygen. She was here. But this time something was different. The shots didn't just break the ambush. They guided the team, pushing them toward a narrow pass, carving a path with precision. "She's moving us," Marcus realized aloud. O'Neill's eyes widened as he followed the line of fire. "She's herding us out." For the next hour, the impossible unfolded. Every time they faced a kill zone, her rifle spoke. Every time they hesitated, her voice cut faintly through the radio. "Left ridge, 10 meters down. Wait, now move." It was as if an unseen commander directed their retreat. And when at last they stumbled into relative safety, battered but alive, Marcus felt the weight of gratitude crush him. She had risked exposure for them. Again. But why? That night he found his answer. They had set up camp in a shallow ravine. The men slept in exhaustion, but Marcus stayed awake, turning the casing she had left behind between his fingers. The wind shifted. He knew before he looked up that she was there. She stood at the edge of the firelight, rifle slung across her back, scarf hiding her face. "You should stop waiting for me," she said quietly. Marcus rose slowly, careful not to wake the others. "And yet you came." She tilted her head as if weighing his words. "Because if I don't, more of you will die." "Then why stay hidden? Why not return? You'd be celebrated, honored, remembered." Her eyes, sharp and weary, met his. "Celebrated?" She almost laughed, but the sound carried no joy. "I couldn't save my team. They died because I wasn't fast enough, strong enough. That's the only story that matters." "They were doctors, aid workers. You were a sniper with no backup. No one could have." "I could have," she interrupted. Her voice cracked, the steel bending just enough for him to glimpse the fracture beneath. "I grew up shooting since I was 5. I hit targets at ranges people said were impossible, and when it mattered most, I failed. Marcus's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to tell her the truth wasn't so cruel, but he saw in her eyes that this belief was what anchored her. That guilt had become her compass. "You're punishing yourself," he said softly. "I'm serving them," she countered. She gestured toward the mountains. "Every child in those villages who wakes up alive, that's my penance. That's their memory." Her words cut through him, sharp and unyielding. This wasn't about duty or orders. This was about a woman building her redemption in shadows, one silent shot at a time. Before he could say more, movement stirred in the dark. Not hers, others. Figures approached, armed, cautious. She reacted instantly, rifle up, but then lowered it. "They're with me." From the darkness emerged women, Afghan villagers, young and old, rifles slung awkwardly across their shoulders. They moved with discipline but not military polish. Their eyes carried both fear and determination. Marcus realized with a jolt she had been telling the truth. She was training them. "They're not soldiers," he whispered. "They don't need to be," she replied. "They only need to be mothers who refuse to lose their children, daughters who refuse to be stolen, women who refuse to be silent." Marcus looked at the women, their faces illuminated by the flickering fire. Not warriors by birth, but warriors by necessity. "This is your army," he said quietly. Her gaze hardened. "This is my family." The women stayed only briefly, delivering supplies and whispered updates before vanishing into the night. When they were gone, Marcus turned back to her. "You can't keep this up forever. One day they'll find you." She gave a small, sad smile. "Then I'll die with purpose, better than dying forgotten." "You're already forgotten," Marcus said sharply. His own words startled him, harsher than he intended. "But it doesn't have to be that way. You could come back, teach, lead, share what you've built here on a larger scale." Her silence stretched long, then she shook her head. "Command doesn't want ghosts. They want soldiers they can control. I've lived free of chains since the day they buried me in a report. I won't give that up, not for you, not for anyone." The words struck like a hammer, final, immovable. And yet behind them Marcus heard something else. Fear, not of dying but of being seen again, of being asked to live. By dawn she was gone. All that remained was another casing by the fire, etched with the same markings, her silent promise. Marcus pocketed it, but this time the weight of it was different. Heavy not with gratitude but with the burden of knowing too much and not enough. Because now he understood why she stayed. But he also understood the truth she couldn't admit. She wasn't free. She was trapped in her own legend, chained to the guilt she refused to release. And one day, those chains would drag her under. When the team flew out days later, Marcus kept his eyes fixed on the mountains. McRaven glanced at him. "You saw her again, didn't you?" Marcus didn't answer. McRaven sighed. "She won't let you save her, Marcus. Don't drown trying." But Marcus wasn't sure anymore. Because for the first time, he realized saving her might not mean bringing her back. It might mean letting her go. Why does a ghost linger in the living world? To protect or to haunt? Marcus Latrell couldn't shake the fire-lit memory of her words. "This is my family." She had pointed to those women, villagers armed with second-hand rifles, as if they were a battalion forged of blood and resolve. Not soldiers, not trained warriors, just mothers, daughters, sisters lifted into war because silence would have been worse. Her conviction rattled him. She wasn't hiding out of fear. She was building something. Something no file, no report, no command structure could contain. And he couldn't stop asking himself, was she saving lives or sentencing herself to a slow death in the shadows? The team returned to base exhausted, their mission technically successful, though no one felt like celebrating. Maps collected, weapons destroyed, numbers added to reports. Yet every man carried the unspoken truth: they hadn't survived by strategy or intelligence. They had survived because a ghost had chosen to intervene again. O'Neill, cleaning his rifle, muttered, "She's always there when we need her. Why doesn't she just join us?" McRaven shot him a sharp look, "Because she doesn't want to." "That doesn't make sense," O'Neill argued. "She's wasting her talent out here. She could lead sniper schools, teach operators, save lives at scale." Marcus said nothing, but inside he felt the fracture widening. O'Neill wasn't wrong, and yet neither was McRaven. She had chosen the mountain winds, and no matter how badly Marcus wanted to pull her back into the world, she wasn't asking to be saved. A week later, Command launched a broader clearing operation. Multiple teams pushed through valleys and ridges, targeting known supply routes. Marcus's team was tasked with securing an overlook. It should have been simple. But as they reached the ridge, they found something unexpected carved into stone near an abandoned shepherd's post. Not in English, not even in Dari, but a symbol, etched carefully, deliberately. A casing marked with the same distinctive etchings lay beside it. "She's leaving messages now," O'Neill whispered. Marcus stared at the mark. It wasn't random, a shape resembling a mountain peak. 3 lines carved through it almost like paths. A warning, a map, or something else. "She wants us to follow," Marcus said quietly. That night Marcus couldn't sleep. The men snored around him, exhausted from the climb, but his eyes stayed locked on the stars above the ridges. He thought of her again. Rebecca, Alexandra, the Guardian, whoever she truly was. Why mark a stone, leave a casing? Why risk exposure? Unless she wanted them to understand something, unless she was reaching out. But reaching for what? The answer came days later. Another mission, another ambush. Only this time, when her rifle cracked through the storm, she didn't vanish afterward. Instead, as night fell and the team regrouped, Marcus felt the hairs on his neck rise. She was there, stepping out from shadow into firelight once again. No scarf this time, just a cap pulled low, hair tucked back, eyes sharp as always. "You followed the mark," she said simply. Marcus nodded. "What does it mean?" Her gaze flickered, a hesitation, rare for her. Then she sighed. "It means you're not the only ones being hunted." The words settled like a stone in Marcus's stomach. "What do you mean?" McRaven pressed. "They're coming for the villages," she said. "Systematically. Burning, taking, erasing. It's not about your missions, it's about theirs. Warlords carving territory." "And you've been stopping them," Marcus realized. She didn't answer, she didn't need to. O'Neill leaned forward, almost pleading. "Then why not tell Command, let us help you?" Her eyes cut to him, then to Marcus. "Because Command doesn't care about villages. They care about objectives, and people like me, we don't fit into objectives." The bitterness in her tone was unmistakable. "Is that what this is?" Marcus asked softly. "Punishing them, punishing yourself?" Her expression hardened. "This isn't about me. This is about them." She pointed again to the mountains, where faint fires from distant villages flickered in the night. "Those lights go out if I leave." Marcus felt the words cut deeper than any bullet. But then she did something unexpected. She reached into her pack and pulled out a small, folded photograph. She placed it on the rock between them. Her with a group of people, smiling faces, medical supplies piled behind them. Aid workers, her team. "They died here," she said quietly. "I buried them with my hands. Every shot I take, every child I train is for them. That's all I have left." Her voice broke, just slightly. Enough to remind Marcus that beneath the legend, there was still a woman clawing her way through grief. The silence stretched. Finally Marcus spoke. "You're not just surviving for them, you're dying for them, one piece at a time." Her eyes snapped to his, fierce. "Better me than them." It wasn't surrender, it was defiance. And Marcus realized then he couldn't change her. Not with logic, not with promises, not with orders. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was choosing her exile. But still, something inside him rebelled against accepting it. When dawn came, she was gone again. Only the photo remained on the rock. Marcus tucked it carefully into his pack. Over the next weeks, the team carried out missions with an unspoken shadow at their side. Sometimes her rifle cracked in the distance. Sometimes her voice slipped into their radio with a warning. Other times, nothing, only silence, heavier than the firefights themselves. Each time, Marcus wondered if it would be the last. Each time he asked himself if he should tell Command, but he didn't, not once. Because he understood something no file would capture. She wasn't theirs to claim. She belonged to the mountains now. One night while the team rested after a brutal exfil, Marcus sat alone, the photo in his hands. McRaven approached quietly, sitting beside him. "You're carrying her like a weight." Marcus didn't look up. "She carries all of us." McRaven studied him for a moment, "And when she's gone?" Marcus's chest tightened. He had no answer. Because the truth terrified him. One day she would vanish for good, not as a ghost into the shadows, but as a woman into the earth. And when that happened, her story would vanish with her. Unless someone chose to remember. For the first time, Marcus began to wonder if that someone was him. Not to drag her back, not to rewrite her choices, but to make sure her legend lived, not just in whispers but in truth. And maybe, he thought, that was why she left the photo behind. Not just as a reminder of her grief, but as a request, silent, wordless. To remember her when she no longer could. How long can someone live in the shadows before the light finally exposes them? Marcus Latrell asked himself that question every time he looked at the photo she had left behind. The faces of her lost team smiled up at him, doctors, healers, innocents, and her standing tall among them, unknowing of the fate that awaited. The photo had become more than a relic. It was a message, but he wasn't sure if it was meant for him or for herself. Command had started asking questions. Not about her, at least not directly, but about the team's unusual survival rate, about the intelligence they always seemed to acquire, about the ambushes they kept slipping through as if warned ahead of time. McRaven pulled Marcus aside one evening. "They're sniffing around," McRaven said, his tone low. "Intel wants answers. They're starting to think we've got an outside asset." Marcus's gut clenched. He pictured her standing on the ridge, rifle slung over her back, hair tucked into a cap, a shadow walking among legends. "She's not an asset," Marcus said quietly. McRaven's eyes narrowed. To them, everything's an asset or a liability. The warning hung in the air. The mission that followed wasn't unusual on paper, a sweep of a suspected arms route, but Marcus's instincts prickled as soon as they set out. Something about the valley felt wrong. The air was heavy still, too still. Then the first shot cracked. But it wasn't hers. It came from the opposite ridge, followed by a storm of fire. The team dove for cover, rounds snapping past their ears, rocks shattering around them. "Contact front, 2 o'clock," O'Neill shouted, returning fire. Marcus pressed against the earth, radio crackling static. He waited, half hopping, half praying, for the familiar precision of her rifle, for the calm voice on the line telling them where to move. But nothing came. "Where the hell is she?" O'Neill cursed. Marcus's chest tightened. Had they finally pushed too far? Had she been caught? The fight dragged on, chaotic and brutal. The team clawed their way into an escape route, battered but alive. By the time they staggered into cover hours later, silence pressed down heavier than the gunfire ever had. This time, no rifle had saved them. This time she hadn't come. Back at base, Marcus barely spoke. He sat on his bunk, staring at the photo, the casing he always kept in his pocket lying beside it. O'Neill broke the silence. "Maybe she's gone, maybe they found her." The words twisted like a knife. McRaven, quieter, added, "Or maybe she chose not to intervene." Marcus's jaw clenched. He didn't want to believe it, but doubt had a way of seeping into even the strongest armor. Why hadn't she come? The answer arrived 2 nights later. Marcus was walking perimeter when he felt it, the prickling sensation of being watched. He stopped, scanning the darkness. Then she stepped out from shadow. She looked different this time, tired, more worn than before. Dust streaked her face, a faint cut along her temple. "You weren't there," Marcus said. The words came out harsher than he intended. Her eyes, calm yet heavy, met his. "I was fighting my own battle." "What happened?" She hesitated, then sighed. "They found one of the villages I've been protecting, came in force. I couldn't leave." Marcus's breath caught. He pictured her standing alone against waves of fighters, villagers behind her, children clinging to mothers. "How many?" he asked. "Too many." Her voice was quiet, but the steel beneath it remained. "We held them off, but not without cost." Her gaze dropped, just for a moment. Enough for Marcus to see the fracture, guilt threading through the armor she wore. "You can't fight them all," he said gently. "I can fight enough," she replied. Her conviction was unshakable, but Marcus heard the exhaustion underneath, and it terrified him. For a long moment, they stood in silence, desert wind whipping around them. Then she spoke again. "Command is asking questions, aren't they?" Marcus froze. "How do you?" "I hear things," she said simply. "They'll come looking, and when they do, you'll have to decide what story you tell." Her eyes bored into his, unwavering. "If you give them my name, I disappear, truly disappear." Marcus's chest tightened. The truth laid bare. She was asking him to choose. Duty or legend, orders or silence. He swallowed hard. "Why me?" Her gaze softened just slightly. "Because you still see me as human, not just as a ghost." The words struck deep. He wanted to answer, to promise her safety, but the lump in his throat stopped him. Instead, she turned and melted back into shadow, leaving him with nothing but the casing she had placed at his feet. Another promise, another burden. The next morning, Marcus sat with McRaven, the decision pressing on him like a weight. "If they ask directly," McRaven said, "what will you say?" Marcus stared at the photo, the casing, the ghost who walked between life and death. "I don't know," he admitted. But he did know. Deep down, he knew exactly what he would do. Days later, command called them in. The questions came sharp, precise. How did you survive? Where did the intel come from? Did you have unauthorized support? Marcus answered with calm lies. Terrain advantage, lucky breaks, local whispers. He threaded the truth with shadows, careful, deliberate. When it was over, the officer leaned back, skeptical. "Some stories don't add up, Commander." Marcus met his gaze evenly. "Some stories aren't meant to." That night Marcus walked outside alone. The stars burned above the ridges. He didn't see her, he didn't hear her voice. But he knew she was out there, carrying her own war, unseen, unthanked. And he knew now what it meant to carry her secret. It wasn't just silence, it was loyalty. A choice to let her remain what she had chosen to become, a guardian in the shadows. Yet even as he accepted it, a new fear gnawed at him. How long could she keep fighting? And when her war finally ended, would it be in victory? Or in silence, buried in a land that had already claimed too much? What happens when two wars, one in the shadows, one on the record, collide? Marcus Latrell learned the answer the night the sky burned over the Petch Valley. The mission was supposed to be straightforward: interdict a weapons convoy snaking through the mountains. Command's brief was precise: drone surveillance, coordinated strike, clean in and out, nothing messy. But Marcus's gut churned as soon as he saw the maps. The convoy's path cut dangerously close to a cluster of villages, villages he had heard her whisper about, villages she had protected. When the briefing ended, McRaven leaned in. "You're thinking about her." Marcus didn't deny it. If the strike pushes too wide, those villages burn. That's not our call. But Marcus knew better. Wars on paper never matched wars on the ground. They moved at dusk, boots sinking into loose shale, the valley painted red by the setting sun. Overhead, the distant hum of drones grew louder. O'Neill glanced at Marcus as they crouched in the rocks. "You think she knows?" "She always knows," Marcus muttered. And he was right. Minutes before the convoy appeared, the radio hissed. Her voice slipped through, faint but steady. "Abort the strike, villages in range." The men froze. McRaven's jaw clenched. "She's on comms again." Marcus keyed his mic. "Identify yourself." "Silence." "Then, if you hit them here, children die." The words struck harder than any bullet. "Command gave us orders," McRaven said, his voice low. "Orders kill families tonight," she countered, her voice sharp now. Marcus's chest tightened. Two wars colliding in real time, his team caught in the middle. The convoy appeared, headlights cutting the dark, trucks crawling like insects through the pass. "Drone strike in 30 seconds, command crackled over the radio. Marcus's hand hovered over his mic. He saw the convoy. He saw the faint glow of villages nearby. And in his mind he saw her standing with her ragtag defenders, refusing to let another grave be dug in silence. "Abort strike," Marcus said suddenly. The radio snapped back. "Say again." "Abort strike," Marcus barked. "Villages in blast radius." The channel went dead for a heartbeat. Then command answered cold. "Orders stand. Execute." The drone engines roared above. And then the sky split open. But not from the drones. From her. A crack of rifle fire echoed down the valley. A lead truck swerved, tire blown, slamming into the vehicle behind it. Another shot, the driver of the last truck slumped, convoy bottlenecked. "Holy hell," O'Neill whispered, eyes wide. She wasn't stopping the strike. She was forcing it to fail. Explosions rippled through the convoy as her shots triggered fuel tanks. Fire lit the night, smoke pouring skyward. The drones circled above, unable to strike cleanly now without risk of spreading flames into the villages. The strike was aborted. She had beaten the system with nothing but a rifle. Command was furious. Back at base, the debrief was brutal. Questions fired sharper than bullets. Who compromised the op? Who warned the convoy? Who sabotaged the strike? Marcus sat silent. His men followed his lead. No one spoke her name. But the officers weren't fools. They knew. And Marcus felt the net closing. That night she came. Not to the firelight this time. To him alone outside the wire. "You endangered your men," Marcus said. His voice shook with anger he didn't know he carried. Her eyes were calm, unreadable. "I saved children." "You think command won't come after you now? You embarrassed them, made them bleed pride." "Let them come." Her voice was steady, but Marcus saw the flicker in her eyes, not fear but weariness. "You can't keep this up," he pressed. "Every time you win, they'll push harder, and one day it won't be warlords hunting you. It'll be us." She didn't flinch. "So be it." Marcus's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, to shake her, to drag her out of the darkness she had chosen. But all he could do was whisper the truth clawing at his chest. "You're not just a ghost anymore. You're a target." Her gaze softened just for a heartbeat. Then she stepped back into shadow. And was gone. The weeks that followed carried tension sharper than knives. Command tightened oversight. Missions doubled. Questions never stopped. But still, her rifle cracked through the night when they needed it most. Still, her voice whispered warnings that saved lives. And Marcus felt the trap closing around her, around himself, around everyone caught between orders and conscience. One evening, as the team prepared for another op, O'Neill confronted him. "We can't keep this secret forever, sir. Command knows. They're just waiting to corner us." Marcus looked at him, What are you saying? I'm saying when it comes down to it, whose side are you on? Theirs or hers? The question struck like a blade, because Marcus knew one day he would have to choose. And whichever choice he made, something would break. That night sleep wouldn't come. He sat awake, staring at the photo encasing beside him, two relics of a ghost who refused to die. He thought of her words, some guardians need to remain in the shadows. But what if the shadows were no longer safe? What if the legend she had built was about to collapse under the weight of exposure? And what if, by protecting her, he doomed his men? As dawn broke, Marcus finally understood the truth. This war wasn't about villages, convoys, or even survival. It was about her. Her choice to vanish, his choice to remember. Her battle to protect, his battle to decide what her story would become. And in that truth lay the question that haunted him most. When her shadow finally fell, would he be the one to let her disappear? Or the one to make sure the world never forgot her name? What happens to legends when the world finally notices them? Do they live forever, or vanish the moment they are named? Marcus Latrell felt the weight of that question as heavily as the rifle slung across his chest, because the legend wasn't just out there in the ridges anymore. She was now on every commander's tongue. The unknown sniper, the ghost who kept sabotaging missions, saving lives the wrong way, fighting her own private war in the middle of theirs. She was no longer invisible. And in war, visibility meant death. The order came down hard, full-scale assault, multiple teams deployed to crush a stronghold rumored to house both weapons stockpiles and high-value commanders. No delays, no excuses. Marcus's team was assigned a flank. Officially, their job was simple: cut off escape routes. Unofficially, Marcus' new command wanted eyes on them, watching, measuring, waiting for proof of the ghost they'd heard too many whispers about. He felt it in the air. The trap wasn't just for the insurgents, it was for her. They moved under cover of night, mountains stretching endless and black. Every sound carried too far. Every shadow felt like a witness. By the time they reached the ridge, the battle had already erupted. Explosions thundered through the valley. The stronghold spat fire from caves and bunkers. Radio chatter screamed chaos. And then her voice cut through. "North Ridge, they're flanking you." O'Neill froze. "She's here." McRaven's jaw tightened. "Command is listening if she keeps talking." Another burst of gunfire cut his words short. Marcus's gut twisted. She was exposing herself. But she kept going. "Two on your left, take cover now." The men obeyed without question. A moment later, mortars shredded the ground where they'd been. Without her, they'd be gone, again. For 2 hours the battle raged, and through it all her rifle cracked like thunder in the night. Not constant, not reckless, precise, calculated. She wasn't just fighting the enemy, she was shaping the fight. But Marcus knew every shot, every word, pulled her closer to the crosshairs of command. And then it happened. "Unknown sniper, identify yourself." The order cut across all channels, cold and sharp. She stayed silent. Again, "Sniper, identify, or be marked hostile." Still silence. Marcus's hand shook over his radio. He wanted to speak, to cover her, to erase her existence with another lie, but his throat closed. The truth was already out. When dawn broke, the stronghold was rubble. Command called it victory, but Marcus felt none. Because she hadn't appeared after. No salute from the ridge, no casing left by the fire, nothing. The mountain winds were silent. Days passed, patrols, reports, missions, but no sign of her. The team grew restless, unsettled. "Maybe she's finally gone," O'Neill muttered, though his voice carried no relief. Marcus said nothing, but every night he walked the perimeter, searching shadows, listening for a crack that never came. Until one night, near a remote pass, he found it. Not her, but a shell casing. etched, placed deliberately on a rock. Beside it, a strip of fabric, torn, blood-stained. Marcus's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. She was alive, or she had been, but wounded. And worse, hunted. The next week was hell. Missions piled up, Command's eyes sharpened, every movement monitored. But Marcus's thoughts stayed with her. Was she lying in some cave, bleeding alone? Was she still fighting, dragging herself through stone and dust to protect the villages she had sworn to defend? And the question he feared most, would she rather die in those mountains than ever let herself be found? On their final mission before rotation, Marcus got his answer. The team was moving through a valley when the ambush hit. Explosions ripped the earth. Fire poured from the ridges. They were outnumbered, outflanked, minutes from annihilation. Then her rifle. But this time it wasn't distant. It was close. Too close. Marcus turned and saw her. Not on a ridge, not in shadow, but there among them, standing, firing with deadly precision, her scarf torn, her face bare. The men stared in shock even as they fought beside her. The ghost in flesh finally revealed. She moved like lightning, cutting down fighters with impossible calm. But Marcus saw the blood on her sleeve, the limp in her step. She was hurt badly, and still she fought. "Go," she shouted, her voice sharp. "Move to the pass, I'll hold them." "No," Marcus grabbed her arm. "You come with us." Her eyes met his. For the first time he saw the full weight of her grief, her resolve, her choice. "This is where it ends for me." "No," Marcus whispered, desperate. "It doesn't have to." But she only pressed the photo, the one of her lost team, into his hand. "Remember us," she said softly. Then she tore herself free and turned back to the fight. Marcus was dragged away by McRaven, the team pushing toward the pass. Gunfire roared behind them. And then silence. At extraction, Marcus refused to look back. He couldn't. But when the chopper lifted into the sky, he scanned the ridges one last time. And for just a moment, a flicker. A figure standing tall against the rising sun, hand raised in a salute. And then gone. Was it real, or just the mountain winds carrying her legend one last time? He would never know. Back at base, Command demanded answers. Marcus gave none. His final report was short, almost empty. Local intelligence inconclusive. Outcome, mission complete. But in his personal notes, words he would never submit, he wrote what his heart knew. She was more than a sniper, more than a soldier, more than a ghost. She was the kind of guardian the world doesn't make room for, and because of that she will never be remembered by name, only by the lives she saved, and maybe that's the way she wanted it. Years later, Marcus still carried the photo, still carried the casing. Not as proof, not as evidence, but as a promise. Because legends don't need monuments. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then, like a shadow, vanishes into the wind.